The Capital Outlay Committee to order. This is Tuesday, October the 3rd, 2023. It's now 6:30 p.m. and we're going to start our meeting first with a call to order, just a voice vote, if you will, identifying the presence of our members. So I'll call the roll call, and when you hear your name, please just indicate that you are in fact attending the meeting. Kevin Connolly.
Here.
Tim McDonough.
Here.
Maya Bodenhofer.
Here.
Jerry Miller.
Here.
Eric Fleming.
Here.
Sarah Sullivan.
Here.
Ernie Pachikowski.
Here.
Anne Marie Mazzola. And I'm here. Well, we have 8 of the 9, so we do have a quorum. Just before I start, apologies to the committee. I returned from several weeks of travel on Wednesday evening, and I did touch base with Mike on the agenda for this evening on Thursday. I didn't note at that time that the meeting was called for as a remote meeting. I think going forward, I think the preference for the committee will probably be to have an in-person meeting with the option to be remote if necessary. So my apologies that we're meeting on a remote basis. Also just want to indicate that we have also online and several people from the town. I want to recognize that on the call also is Molly Ahern, Mark Ryan. I see Ann Haley is on board. John Kenny, Kevin Rutherford. Thank you, Kevin, for organizing the call. Sue Bartlett, and Sam White. Sam and John representing the rec department, and Byron here is associated with the engineering firm that did the design work for the Hawes Pool. If I missed anybody, Clayton, I think Clayton is online too. Clayton Cheever, you are here as well?
Yes, I am here. Good evening, Bob.
And Chief Brooks is online as well. So there you have it. We have department heads here in the event that there are any specific questions about the projects. The folks are here, and I see Anne Marie Mazzola now has joined, and that brings us to the full complement of our 9 members. We usually are supported by John and Mike Rosen from the are at a conference this week, and are not going to be in attendance. And Tony is not here either. He is has a conflict, is not attending. So with that, I'll turn my attention now to the agenda. The first order of business is meeting minutes for approval by the committee, meeting minutes from September the 6th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Kevin,
Second.
seconded by whom?
Tim.
Tim, okay. Any discussion on the minutes from September the 6th? Okay, with that, we'll go through the roll call again. Lovely having remote meetings. On the minutes, Kevin Connolly.
Yes.
Tim McDonough.
Yes.
Maya Bodenhofer.
Yes.
Jerry Miller.
Yes.
Eric Fleming.
Yes.
Sarah Sullivan.
Yes.
Anne Marie Mazzola.
Yes.
Ernie Pachikowski.
Yes.
Chair votes yes as well, so that's unanimous vote. The next item is our updates on capital projects. Included in the package is the memo from John Signorello, dated September the 25th, 2023. This is the typical update on our ongoing capital projects. Are there, this is not for a vote, but has everybody had an opportunity to review the updates, and are there any questions about the update? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to the next agenda item, number 4, which is we have listed a vote to approve the FY24 capital improvement plan by way of communication this afternoon in talking with Tony. The projects that were presented on the spreadsheet in the packet are all the general fund projects and the water and sewer projects that we have been looking at for the last several weeks. I did notice that we did have projects that are funded by our operating budget and our grants, namely the ARPA projects that are supporting the stormwater. So when we discuss votes, my recommendation is that we also consider, even though they're not on the spreadsheet you have, the grant funded program for stormwater, I do believe should have a vote by this committee for those two projects that are stormwater related. I'm going to suggest, unless anyone feels differently, that perhaps from the projects on operating budget may not require a vote since they were approved at the annual town meeting. Does anyone have a different view that we should formally vote for the operating budget projects this evening? Or can we proceed as I described with general fund, water, and the stormwater projects for review this evening?
I'll go along with the chairman's recommendation.
Okay, so this afternoon, included in the distribution of information, I think I tried to summarize a little bit in this afternoon's email. The things that have changed since the last time we met, I think are best summarized on the proposed funding. We've had some changes since the last meeting. We actually have now certified cash of 12.9 million. We have the state notice that it is at 12.9. The project for roads has been moved from a combination of borrowing to cash, borrowing and cash. That has moved totally to cash. So the $2.8 million infrastructure program for roads has now moved to cash. Before we go on to entertain votes and such, are there any observations, questions in regards to the new chart for proposed funding?
So, Bob, the chart you just mentioned about the roads being all cash, I noticed that the plan still says borrowing in cash for the road program.
It should say cash.
Okay, so that needs to be corrected.
Right. It should just be cash. I think that's just a error in updating.
Okay, and does the chart, the funding source chart, does that include having the road program all cash? It doesn't seem to.
The cash projects are 2.7 million plus the Forbes general fund. So there's a combination of funding sources, both cash from the general fund, basically free cash, and $2 million from the Forbes estate sale. So in total, that's 4.7 million. So those that 4.7 within that 4.7 million is the the infrastructure program. I believe that's how
Is the 2.8? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Yes.
Attorney, on that 2 million borrowing from the Forbes, just a question. We got the certified cash as 12.9 million, and I'm going to ask you financial people on the Finance Commission, is that a good number? Is it higher than you thought? And the reason I'm asking is, once you take money out of that Forbes sale and you go to town meeting and saying we're taking the money out of the Forbes sale, you kind of open up a slippery slope to go back into it again. And for purposes, people look, I'm just thinking at the floor of town meeting, you may get some pushback when they say, well, that money was earmarked for open space and this and that. Why are we, and pretty soon it erodes. So I'm just wondering if the 12.9 is a good number. Can we take more of that 2 million out of the 12.9, or I don't know if you follow where I'm going with this. I just think it's a slippery slope once you start grabbing the money out of the Forbes if we have another source for it, because you can always go back in and rationalize going back into it. You're smiling, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, my Evan Farah can chime in too, but just one point about Forbes is that utilizing $2 million for the capital plan does not affect the ability of the bulk of the Forbes money to be used for other purposes. So I think we were intending that $6 million of that would be used for open space. That particular idea is not impacted by the use of this $2 million.
Okay, that answers my
So
question.
this kind of, I'll let my Evan, Sarah, I mean, this kind of gets into some complexity from our a ruling that DOR made that we can review. But
Bob, if I could,
yes,
so the short answer is 12.9 million is a great number. So that's very good. But I do think that the FinCom has talked about wanting to have kind of a long-term plan. We are engaging in the process of starting another 5-year plan with the Budget Balancing Committee. We're through the 5 years of the override, and now we want to talk about what's going forward. And so, although I think 12.9 million is a very healthy number, I think if we need some money to support our operating budget in the near future, then we could burn through $12.9 million really easily in over 5 years. And so I don't think the FinCom has said that before we commit too much in the way of free cash, we would like to have more of a conversation about what that 5-year plan looks like and how we plan to move forward with that. And we'd like to look at what can we do with free cash to just strengthen our general financial position in the future rather than just spending that. So that's one point. The second point is the question about the Forbes money. Bob is absolutely right that, we originally had said there's about $10 million in Forbes money. We originally said about $6 million would be set aside for open space. We had said about $2 million would go into the override stabilization fund, and another $2 million would go into the general purpose stabilization fund. Because of some details of state law, that vote that we took at town meeting has been voided. And so we now just have all this money sitting there that we can decide what to do with. But I share your concern, Ernie, about the idea of starting to spend it on things. I think that if we had, in fact, moved that $2 million into the stabilization account, I don't think we'd be voting to take $2 million out of stabilization to put to roads. So I share your concerns, but I don't know that capital outlay has to decide all of that. But I think you raise a really good point.
Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate and thinking of what you've obviously, both you and Bob have got the answer, because that will come up on the floor at town meeting. This money was supposed to go for this, but I think you've given pretty good answers to why we can use it if we want to. Thank you.
yeah, and just to add additionally, the capital outlay is responsible for making a formal recommendation for capital projects to town meeting, but FinCom makes the formal recommendation at town meeting, and the Board of Selectmen, I think we are meeting on Tuesday to make our formal review and hopefully vote as well on the plan. So there are other actions that need to be taken before we finally get it to town meeting in November. So and such discussions may happen at that point as well.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? I mean, I know I'm going to put this out here. We have a variety of department heads here representing departments. We asked them here in case there were any questions specifically for the projects. I think we've done a pretty good job vetting them, but I think before we take a vote, there's an opportunity for people to have any final questions discussed regarding the projects. We can do that if the committee desires. I'll take that as like we're good. So everybody in the town.
No,
Sarah-
I raised, no.
Oh.
Sarah raised her hand.
Sarah, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I just, for a point of clarification, are we voting solely on fiscal year 24 or are we voting on the full 5-year plan?
I
Because
think
we have to vote on the full 5-year plan, right?
Right. And people who've been on the committee longer than we had this discussion last year, and I think our focus for the meeting last year was to focus on putting forward what we want the town meeting to consider in the fall town meeting. And I thought and I could be totally wrong about that we met subsequently to do the formal review and voting of the whole plan. Am I incorrect about that? I think we have some recollection as to what we did last year.
I can't remember, so I was here last year and I can't.
I think we did do that, but I don't think it was because we wanted to do it that way. I think we felt up against it and we had to vote on what was going to fall town meeting, and then we didn't have time to vote on the 5-year plan, if I remember that right.
That's my recollection too. So, my thought would be that we vote specifically for the plan for FY24, and subsequently perhaps at our meeting after the town, after our fall meeting, is that we meet to consider formally the 5-year plan. I think that makes sense because I don't know if people are going to have the time and energy. I think we're going to be spending a lot of time and energy this evening finalizing our plan going forward for town meeting. I'm not so sure we are in a position to tackle the rest of the plan from a review standpoint. My 2 cents, opening up a discussion for anyone, any other members.
I agree.
We are comfortable with focusing on the plan before us and to meet subsequent to town meeting to then nail down the plan going forward, which we won't be voting on for financing, but rather voting on for these. We agree or we don't agree that these are the projects that should be hitting the 5-year plan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's what we've done historically in the past. Just
Okay.
the vote tonight should be just on the FY24.
Very good. All right.
Can I ask the second question then, following?
Sarah.
I'm just curious on, and I know I brought this up at the last meeting, and I guess it might not matter, but we're included in this plan, and while I understand it's not a lot of money, there is $75,000 for the flooring apparatus study at the public safety building, and I don't know why we're going to pay for a study if we don't plan to expend for it in the next 5 years. And I've asked that question at previous meetings, and I don't understand why we're spending money to not plan to expend, because to me that would seem foolhardy, because as we've learned, as we do these studies, then the prices change as time goes on. I mean, we can see that in the pool and the other studies. So I'm just not quite sure why we're doing it. Is Chief Bailey on? Or I don't.
So we have a project here. It is the apparatus floor replacement design and study in the public safety building. I do believe this is the floor of the fire department that we're speaking about. And I'm trying to follow the question, Sarah, because normally before we do a major renovation, if you will, or a renovation such as this, we do the design study. So
Don't we usually have something in the out years for expenditures? I mean,
Like a placeholder project for the actual construction.
Yes, right.
Well, and I think it's important to remember that our plan right now is to only spend cash next year for capital outlay because we want to bring our debt service down. So if we don't have the money to pay for that project in cash next year, and it seems like it's quite likely an expensive project, then do we want to fund a study this year, or do we maybe want to postpone that for a year?
projects already on the books for next year add up to about $3.5 million if I've done my calculations correct. So that would require a lot of cash next year. Again,
I would say you won't know what that project costs until you do the design study. If you have the design study done, it gives you an idea what the cost would be. Then there would be opportunity, given the constraints that we might have on cash only projects, to either say at that point that whatever the amount of that project is, it doesn't fit into our FY25 project scheme, but at least we will have the number to work with. And if we can't fund it in FY25, it could be a placeholder for a future project after that. I don't.
but are we incorrect in saying that it's not constraints that we might have on cash only for next year? I believe we were told if we went and spent all of the money this year, then it would be only cash for next year to keep debt service level, correct?
I'm on the Board of Selectmen, and I have not heard that at all.
We've heard that in a capital outlay committee meeting.
But we
Haven't
haven't
we?
heard that. I haven't heard that from the board. The board has not been informed of those constraints. So I'm a little
That
bit
was the proposal that came from the general manager in that memo that went out to all of us.
okay.
Yeah, I agree. I heard it the same way, Bob. At the last meeting, I brought up, and we putting all our, I think I used the analogy, we putting all our eggs in the basket this year and what's left. And the answer
Yeah, I said
basically
that.
was no borrowing.
But I'm still at a loss as to, so are you recommending, is there a motion on the floor to remove the apparatus floor replacement design study of 75,000?
Well, I think it's just something we should, well, I guess if we don't have a good answer, I mean, there's no one on the call tonight that can answer why we would do the study and not have any expenditures out there, right? Because Chief Bailey's not here, nor is anybody, right?
Yeah, if you do design this year, but you're not gonna build it the following year, then when you do build it, you probably have to update the study anyhow. So why not just do the study later? I think that's what we're trying to suggest. Instead of doing it twice.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't,
Largely-
but if you don't provide the money now, you automatically are going to be pushing it off for another whole year.
Well, it just sounds like it's not gonna be possible to do construction next year anyhow. So you're doing a study that you're not gonna, or design you're not gonna use. And then, inherently, you're gonna have to update that study or that design in the future as, things wear or whatever, things happen.
But
It just
It's
seems
in
like
the-
you have to do it twice.
It's in the
But I
same vein as what Ernie asked, because you are going to hear on town meeting floor, right? That people, and maybe that's where we let it go to, but people are like, why do we keep doing these studies? Why do we keep doing these studies? And because it almost makes it inevitable that we're going to expend the dollars. So we've heard that our argument on town meeting floor. So I'm just raising it
yeah, I
as a,
understand.
like,
But,
as a concern, because I just think as we move forward, if we're looking at some point, we got to look at the 5 years. And I think that's the piece that's the hardest is we're taking this and approving this plan based on the fact that we will only spend cash next year. And that I mean, that's what we've been told. So it's a little hard to,
Yeah,
I've raised my concern. We can move on to other people. I just want to,
yeah, I mean,
I just,
I think there's just a lot of unknowns to that. I mean, we don't know what the design would end up with in terms of projected project costs. We also don't know what the availability of our cash will be for FY25. So to me, I don't think it's a bad thing for us to do the design study, and next year maybe it's a cash project that we can afford. I just get a little concerned that when we hear members or meeting members saying, why are we doing all these design studies? Well, we do the design studies because we do have infrastructure and maintenance to keep up with, and we want to do it the right way, and the design studies are mechanism for doing that. So the unknown to me is, well, we don't know what the construction cost would be from the study that would result from that, and we don't know what our cash position would be next year. So I think to me, I think those two unknowns aren't, I just don't see the harm in going forward with the design study personally, but we'll open it up for discussion for other folks.
There's a couple of hands raised. Do you want us to wait for you to call on them?
Who's got the hands up? I'm not getting.
Eric and,
Eric and then Maya.
Eric?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
If Maya had more to say about the fire station, I'll let her go first, but,
Maev?
I'd just like to make a motion to amend the 5-year plan to put the fire apparatus floor in the plan for next year for, say, $500,000. And we know that number is going to change, but the concern is not that we're doing studies, it's that we're doing studies and not even including anywhere in the next 5 years a plan to pay for that. So I think as soon as we start to contemplate a study, we need to make sure that we're at least acknowledging that expense is going forward. So that's my motion.
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
It's been motioned and seconded. On Maev's motion, I will go through a roll call vote. In Maev, this is to plan for the subsequent plan for $500,000 as a placeholder, and we develop a plan as to how to pay for that. Is that basically summarizing the motion?
Yes, to add that for
Add it and plan for
FY25 in the 5-year plan.
On the motion, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Kevin Connolly,
Yes.
Tim McDonough,
Yes.
Maya Bodenhofer,
Yes.
Jerry Miller,
yes,
Eric Fleming,
yes.
Sarah Sullivan,
yes.
Anne Marie Mazzola,
Yes.
Bernie Pachakowski.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That's unanimous. Anything else on the capital improvement plan list that we are working from?
So Bob, I'll go to my question now. I wanted to ask about I wanted to ask about the pool. There was a suggestion from Tony that certain elements of the project might be removed. I wanted to know what the status of that is, and would that, if we take them out of the proposal for this year, does that create another project for a future year to do those other parts of the those other elements?
Why don't we have John Kenny and Byron kind of address the design from the pool and talk about the elements that you speak of. John, do you want to speak to it first, or Byron?
Sure, I'll go ahead first. I apologize, my camera's not working, but I can see all of you. I think when we've started breaking down everything to see, if, money came into play, the budget's tight and everything, we want to do as many projects as we can. The pool being very important. Everybody knows what's going on with that pool. One of the parts that we looked at about taking out was the splash pad. Reason being, one, the splash pad does work right now. There's, the biggest problem with it is that it's not an up-to-date splash pad. It's probably not as efficient as today's models that are out there. And Byron can probably correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I think that package, like if we were to take that out, would be about $500,000. That being said, we did apply for the park grant and we're hoping that we get that. So my feeling was like, if we were able to receive the park grant, that would kind of pay for that splash pad piece. I think the bigger thing, and I think we can all agree, is the pool needs to be replaced and quickly. And I think the longer and longer that we kind of push that out, it's going to get more and more expensive each year we push it out. So I think this is probably the year to do it. But I think, if we're looking at cutting pricing a little bit, that would probably be the smartest spot to cut from that project.
So you would put it like as an option in the contract and see what the bid is, and if we have money for it, we do it, and if not, we don't. Is that the idea?
Yes, that's my feeling on the whole thing.
Okay, and then if we didn't do it, there's nothing to say we can't do it in a future year, right? So we would probably, if we didn't do it, we'd want to put a placeholder item in the 5-year plan to say, okay, here's the other piece we want to do later if we can, right?
Exactly, and we can look at smaller features, like if we want to update some of the splash pad features over the next couple of years, just to kind of spruce it up a little bit, rather than do like a huge project on that part. We can do that until the town's ready to take on another project like that, or we go after another park grant for it.
I see Jerry's hand is up.
Yes, John, in respect to the splash pad, when we actually start doing any work on the pool, are we going to be subject to some state controls on the reservoir that we put in that took care of the splash pad?
Jerry, quite honestly, I'm not sure. Byron might be able to answer that better than I am. On that, I can't give you an answer on that.
Jerry, are you talking about recirculating the water that the splash pad uses?
Yes.
Okay. But a recirculation system.
Correct.
I believe the recirculation system is included in the design. Byron, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was muted.
Okay.
But sure, we introduced the recycling, which is going to be, of course, regulated. Our thought is that if we just leave the splash pad intact, that we can have it operate as it is now, and we don't have to introduce a recycling system in addition to leaving it as is. If we do any work on it, we're going to have to be providing a recycling system, which is what we have designed into the that element now. But we do feel that it is designed in a way that the pump house and trenching and piping would all be set in a fashion that it could be easily plugged into at a later time. So that we're trying to think about how we design it in a way that it has that flexibility to be part of the current project or come in at a later date. And you introduce the recycling and pumping and piping for that element at a later time. But we do feel like, you get a better deal on it now. It was something that the community, when we did our original outreach, it was a kind of key element. So, but we did build in the kind of flexibility to have that done as part of this project or, plugged in at a later time.
I think that Eric raised the question about the grant that John mentioned, the park grant. So if we get, I guess I would make a proposal, I guess, that if the park grant is approved, then we sort of got it covered. So we would be, it wouldn't cost us any more money. We'd sort of have that taken care of by the grant. Could that be made part of the subject to the approval of the park grant?
You could, I guess I would answer it this way. I think if you wanted to make a motion that right now it's the pool construction is 5.7, I suppose you could make a motion that the 5.7 is contingent on receiving $500,000 park grant. And that's one way of doing it. Is that what you're aiming for? Kind of.
Obviously, I think that I would like to see the whole package put together, but I understand the financial restraints everybody's looking at. And if the park grant was part and parcel of this application and the proposal, I think that would be great if we could use it. I'm tempted to say, I guess I'm tempted to put the motion forward as a yes, subject to the approval of the park grant. We go forward with the pool, and the 500,000 would go towards, once the park grant was approved. Does that make sense?
Ernie, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, just, John, on this park grant that you've applied for, there's no guarantee that we're gonna get that. If we get it, we may not get the full 500,000. Is that correct?
From what I've been told, Ernie, that we're in a good spot to get the full amount.
Okay.
It doesn't look like at one point part of it was to go to design. I've talked to the people that are running that grant right now and said we're kind of beyond the design phase, and she was like, that's great. I wish a lot of other people could be as efficient as you guys are. So the full award would go towards construction of the pool project. I had my hand up earlier, and I just wanted to make this very clear. Like, I'm not trying to say we should scrap the splash pad at all. In my eyes, I would love to see the whole project done as one piece. I think what Byron was saying is very true. Like, if we skip the splash pad, that dollar amount still is only going to go up in the future. I think that Kuth and Ranieri have done a great job at putting together this project design to be not only efficient for us in the future, but also have the dollars in mind as we're moving forward to town meeting with hopefully approving this part out. My only thing with the splash pad was, if that's going to kill the whole project as a whole, I'd rather save that part for a later date, unless we did get the park grant.
John, one question about the park grant. So it is a grant. Do they have an award date for the project? When will we know that it's in play or it's not?
From what they've told me, that I should know within the next week or so. So it's a very possible that we should have an answer before town meeting even comes in.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second Jerry's motion.
The motion, as I understand it, would be there's a motion on the floor to fund the project as described at 5.7, contingent upon the award of a $500,000 grant to supplement that 5.7, basically. Seconded by Tim McDonough. We have a motion that has been made and seconded. So on that motion, a roll call vote. Mr. Connolly.
Yes.
Mr. McDonough.
Yes.
Maya Bodenhofer.
I'm sorry. I just John Kinney raised his hand again, and I'm concerned that we haven't really discussed this.
Yes. I have to say, I'm having trouble seeing raised hands. So if people want to, if I'm missing somebody, please do continue to advise me. John, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I saw Sarah's go up first. So if she wants to go first, by all means, please.
Okay, so let's halt the vote and go to discussion. Sarah.
The motion contingent, is it just contingent on the splash park, or the entire project? I was a little confused about that when you restated the motion, because I thought when Jerry made the motion that it was that the grant would go towards the splash park. I guess I'm just a bit confused.
Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your motion is that we approve the 5.7 million for the Hawes pool, but contingent but we're contingent. It's 500,000. If we don't get, it's contingent upon our getting the 500,000 park grant. So in essence, at the end of the day, if we did not get the park grant, we're funding the project at 5.2 million. Is that? Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Thank you.
Okay.
Bob,
Yes, John.
not to cut you off, that was my my pause for putting my hand up. I thought what the motion was going through was, if we didn't get the grant, like, are we squashing this project? Because if that's the case, we'll pull the splash pad out. But no, that's good.
Okay. And, I apologize. It is really kind of hard to monitor the discussion on a remote meeting. So my apologies. I'm going to go back to the roll call because it's been moved in motion, but I do want any other discussion on the motion? Mayev.
Yes, and maybe I'll just raise my hand that way rather than the Google Meet way. I know I'm sitting here at this meeting as the FinCom rep, but I actually think that in general, I like the idea of making things contingent on grants, but in this case, I don't. I think it seems kind of silly to me to try to go to the exercise of rebuilding everything at the pool and then think about going back later to do the splash pad. I love it. I hope we get the grant, fingers crossed. Like, that would be wonderful. And if we do get the grant, it should go to the pool. But I personally think that I would be willing to fund it even at 5.7 million, even if we have to pay for the splash pad ourselves. So I'm going to vote against this motion, but only because I think that we should just fund it regardless of the grant.
Is there any discussion on any further discussion?
I sort of like my
Jerry, you have the opportunity to withdraw your motion if you want to.
I could withdraw my motion and second Maya's motion.
Yep. If you want, I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, it's withdrawn, and folks, we're going to know in probably 2 weeks' time as to whether or not we get the grant. And if we get the grant, it's great news. We can reduce the plan by 500,000, or but the pool goes forward. So my apologies for the confusion. No motion on the floor. It's been withdrawn. Any other comments on the FY24 capital improvement plan as listed on the document provided in the agenda? Mayev, thank you for putting your hand up.
No problem. I am putting my FinCom hat on again. I just want to say that, like, sometimes it's a little bit challenging to figure out kind of what my role is as a capital outlay member and what my role is as a FinCom member. And I think that as a capital outlay member, I think that all of these projects have merit and they're all a good idea. As a FinCom member, I am still not convinced that we've had enough discussion to convince ourselves that we can afford to do all of this at once. And so I don't think that capital outlay needs to necessarily decide, make a final decision on what should be funded in what way. But I would like to suggest that we should perhaps talk a little bit about priorities and say, if we get to a point where we feel that we can't afford to do all of this year, does the capital outlay committee want to put forward some recommendations on what could be possibly postponed till a future year?
And Mayev, on your discussion point, I'm just going to assume that we're talking about, when we talk about affordability, we're talking about those that are on the borrowing side, not the cash projects.
I think it should be a conversation for both, maybe separate conversations, like look at the major projects and say, of those ones, which ones do we think are the priority? I personally think the pool is the highest priority. And then maybe have the discussion about some of the smaller projects. At our last meeting, there was talk about perhaps the Savage Center parking lot could be postponed a year if necessary, if we felt like we didn't have enough money to do everything we wanted to do this year.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. McDonough.
I think we've had enough discussion. We've been having meetings for 9 months now, 10 months. I mean, I think everybody put together the best presentation. We've had time to discuss it ad nauseum, and I'm at the point where I'm ready to vote. I want to move this forward. I think if we delay it for any more time, we're not going to get to that vote at all.
Any other discussion?
I'll make a motion. We approve the FY24 capital outlay as presented.
A motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McDonough's made the motion. Jerry Miller has seconded. And this is, as I understand it, this is for formal approval of the plan as presented in our agenda item. With that, I'll go to the roll call vote once again.
Excuse
Yes.
me, Mr. Chairman, I see Sarah had her hand up.
Okay, yes, Sarah.
I guess I'm just, well, I guess we've discussed it ad nauseum. It doesn't appear that people want to prioritize. So I think it's okay, move forward.
Any other discussion? I'm sorry. Any other hands up? Any other points from folks? Okay. On the motion, Kevin Connolly,
Yes.
Tim McDonough,
Yes.
Maya Bodenhofer,
No.
Jerry Miller,
Yes.
Eric Fleming,
Yes.
Sarah Sullivan,
No.
Anne Marie Mazzula,
Yes.
Ernie Pachakowski,
No.
and chair votes yes. So that's a passing on a 6-3 vote. The plan is adopted by capital outlay. I think everybody does understand too that both the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen in particular do have on their agenda for future meetings further discussion of our recommendations. So where our work may or may not be completed this evening in any event. The only remaining vote that I think that we are discussing, I had mentioned earlier that there are 2 stormwater projects funded by federal grants. It is the construct and improvement to the Meadowbrook Channel stormwater for $1.8 million, Meadowbrook Drain Improvement, Hennessy Field Detention Basin project for $855,000. These are ARPA funded, federal funded plans, but unlike those that have been approved through the operating budget, I don't believe that we have had any kind of approval of those projects, ARPA funding. Is there any discussion on the stormwater projects that we want to consider before moving forward to consideration of those ones? On the ARPA funded projects, then what is the will of the committee?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Miller. On the ARPA funded projects, roll call vote, Kevin Connolly,
Yes.
Tim McDonough,
Yes.
Maya Bodenhofer,
Yes.
Jerry Miller,
Yes.
Eric Fleming,
Yes.
Sarah Sullivan,
Yes.
Anne Marie Mazzola,
Yes.
and Ernie Pachakowski,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. So in ARPA funding, we have a 9-0 vote. Thank you, everyone. I know this has been quite the process this year. We've taken our formal votes. Obviously, as Maya mentioned earlier, there's work to be done on the FinCom side, and the presentation to the Board of Selectmen is taking place on this coming Tuesday. This brings us to a discussion, item 5, discussion of the fall town meeting presentation. And I honestly haven't given much thought to this. I think I need to go back to what we did last year, but my recollection is that we did 2 things. One was we worked with the motions teams to make sure that our motions for our projects are categorized into those that are cash funded versus those that are borrowing. And we segregated the water and sewer projects from the general fund projects. But I think, Maya, refresh my memory, I think you and I gave, and Tony gave sort of an overview presentation to town meeting.
Yes. I think prior to COVID, it was always the practice that the capital outlay committee would make some sort of presentation to town meeting, kind of highlighting the big projects that had been completed in the year before, and then making and talking a bit about what was recommended for the coming year.
If the committee so wishes, what I can do is pull the presentation that we did last year, work with general manager staff to update it with exactly what Maya described. Status updates, recap of the projects, and we have that detail because we've been doing a pretty good job asking the manager staff to come in and give us the updates. So we'll have that. Then we can do a presentation of what the projects are up for consideration here, and then finally kind of give the financial summary, if you will. So if the board wishes, what I can do is just work from the template, if you will, from last year's presentation and update it. I see a lot of nodding heads. We'll do that. Yes, sir.
Sounds good.
And Bob, presumably there'd be descriptions of each of the projects, right? At some point,
Yeah.
the presentation about each project, right?
Yeah, my recollection is from last year that when we put forward the motions, we had sort of a descriptor, including sort of a picture that would kind of give people an orientation as to what the project was about, and then there would be bullet points about what the project entails.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So we'll work on that and bring it forward to the committee. I'll have that emailed out, and we'll have opportunity to meet. Obviously, we'll have opportunity to meet prior to the fall meeting, and I'm going to suggest we do that because I think perhaps after the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom have done their review, I think maybe we should reconvene and work on the presentation and update that. Does that seem reasonable to the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We have gone through our 5 agenda items for this evening. With that, I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McDonough. Roll call vote once again. Kevin Connolly,
Yes.
Tim McDonough,
Yes.
Maya Bodenhofer,
Yes.
Jerry Miller,
Yes.
Eric Fleming,
Yeah.
Sarah Sullivan,
Yes.
Anne Marie Mazzula,
Yes.
Ernie Padzikowski,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. It's 9-0 vote to adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for your patience in getting through this work on a remote basis. Appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the evening, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, thank you all.
Bye-bye now.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.